after 10 o'clock. We still have one interview to get through, a very important one at that. And it's with Boikanyo Moloto, political systems researcher at My Voice Counts. But we'll join her in literally a minute. I do have another important announcement to make. And that, of course, is, as we all know, our guest of honor has arrived in South Africa. She is Al Jazeera journalist Yumna Al Said. She's going to be talking about Gaza in focus. She is here for a full week. And tonight there's a public program being held at the Lakewood Estate, the Lakewood Conference Center at number 2 Vinton Road, Ormonde. For more information, you can contact us here at Salam Media. So that happens tonight from 6:30 onwards. It's a public program, and former DIRCO Minister Dr. Naledi Pandor will also be at the event. So it's the arrival of Al Jazeera journalist Yumna Al Said talking about upwards of 150 journalists that have been killed by the genocidal occupiers in Palestine. And to share the platform with Yumna Al Said is Dr. Naledi Pandor, former DIRCO minister. This is happening from 6:30 p.m. tonight at the Lakewood Conference Center at number 2 Vinton Road in Ormonde. For further details, please contact us here at Salam Media. And very quickly to tell you that tomorrow evening, Yumna Al Said will be in Johannesburg from the 22nd and 23rd of August. She'll be in Botswana. That's Thursday and Friday. On the 24th of August, she'll be splitting between Johannesburg and Pretoria. 25th and 26th of August in Nelspruit. 27th of August in Benoni. 28th of August in Greenside. 29th of August in Roshni. 30th of August in Pietermaritzburg. Between the 31st and the 1st of August, that is Saturday and Sunday, the coming week, she will be in Cape Town. So make sure that you catch her at one of those venues. A very dynamic journalist, Yumna Al Said from Al Jazeera, to talk about journalists in Gaza and Palestine at large being targeted by the genocidal occupiers. Let's move on now. Thank you indeed for your patience. Boikanyo Moloto, you are a political systems researcher at My Voice Counts, and you are going to be talking about something that I was quite surprised to learn about, and that, of course, is developing an alternative electoral system. I'm worried. Why? Does it indicate that the system didn't work in the past? A very good morning to you and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Julian. Good morning to your listeners as well. So the establishment of the Civil Society Electoral Panel, Reform Panel, really builds on years of campaigning to reshape South Africa's electoral reform process. So in 1994, we held the elections under a transitionary electoral constitution and a transitionary time where the electoral system was really meant to be a temporary one. Moving on to the rest of the years, where important work had been done around electoral reform and important conversation had been had, there still hasn't been a change. We're still using the same system that we used in 1994, 1999. We've seen over the years the lack of accountability that comes with the current system. We've seen over the years the way that democracy has sort of lost its place in South Africa. And with that said, with the state trying to reform the electoral system, the two major parts of that being the Van Slabbert Commission 2003, and then the Ministerial Advisory Committee in 2020, where these task teams were formed before by the state, but their recommendations were never implemented. And with the Electoral Matters Amendment Act that's come into effect, there was a sunset clause which also directed that the state should establish a panel of its own to inform on the electoral process, so that the electoral process would be different for the 2029 elections. So we thought that it would be an opportune time as well for civil society to really play a definitive role building on the years of campaigning by various civil society organizations. So for us, this panel would intend to function as a definitive voice on true electoral reform.
What does that mean for the ordinary layperson on the street? And of course, we talk about local elections and we talk about provincial and national elections. And we do know that the electoral committees have to be, they work hard. The moment one election is done and dusted, they immediately hard at work to prepare for the next one. So what are the loopholes in the current system that we're worried about and that we need to close up, that we need to tighten up, so that there isn't any suspicions around local and national elections? Even recently, we've been told that, and in other countries as well, we hear about votes being rigged and papers being dumped and a whole host of issues. It's just ongoing. So I know it's not necessarily specific to us in South Africa. This seems to be a problem that seems to plague all countries when elections are in motion.
So, true electoral reform really for us would be about deepening democracy, right? So, we would want an electoral system that really increases accountability and transparency. What we have seen is that there's a huge distance between the layman or everyday citizen and their representatives in parliament or in leadership positions. So, we would want an electoral system that increases that accountability, that also allows everyday citizens to have a voice towards particular processes. Right now, we do have processes like public participation, but are they meaningful? So looking around electoral systems that provide everyday citizens with those options of, for example, the right to recall someone who has not delivered within a certain amount of time, right?
Ah.
At different, for example, coalition agreements and saying, how do we hold those coalitions accountable? If, for example, Boikanyo had voted for EFF and now EFF goes into a coalition with the ANC, for example, how do we then hold that coalition accountable? Right? So the electoral system or electoral reform would be looking around things like that in order to increase accountability as well as transparency. In terms of, we know that money influences politics. So we would like to know who is funding these political parties and what are their agendas? And is there maybe a reason why political parties tend to sway away from their ideologies and their policy? And who are those policies now satisfying now that they have changed?
So, what would the IEC's role be in all of this? Because I was slightly confused, I do admit, when we spoke about electoral systems. I was thinking about how the process starts, the work that goes in, getting everything really on track regarding election time, electioneering. But I didn't think a step further, and you've just highlighted that, and it's very, very important indeed. Post elections, how do we hold people accountable? And how does the IEC then play a role in all of this?
The IEC's one of the main mandates for the IEC is really to hold true, free, and fair elections, right? That is also a contribution towards our democracy and holding the state accountable in some ways, right? So they would be playing a huge role in terms of holding those free and fair elections, ensuring that they are run smoothly, ensuring that the Electoral Act is followed to the T. They really do play a major role in our democracy as a Chapter 9 institution. And that is why we would not even want their credibility or integrity to be compromised in any way. Even the attacks that have been happening prior to the elections, during the elections, and before even this election year, where there were many attacks by different political parties so to erode the trust in people on the IEC. The IEC really plays a major role towards deepening democracy, and I think they've done a great job at that.
Yes, I do remember. What comes to mind is that there was calls by certain political parties or politicians wanting someone very high up in the IEC to step down because she was white and she wasn't to be trusted. Am I correct in thinking that that was the narrative that was being played out?
Yes, that was the narrative that was being played
Right.
out, but there was no evidence to such
Okay. Right,
execution.
right. What you're saying here is gosh, mind blowing, very, very important. But here I am sitting and thinking, is this ever going to be a possibility? I mean, imagine when elections are done and dusted and people are not delivering. And we know that our politicians are steeped in corruption. How do we call them out? They're not even being called out post the Zondo Commission. So, how are they going to be called out? How are they going to be fired? That's the all important question.
So it's interesting that you mentioned the Zondo Commission, Julie, because one of their recommendations was on electoral reform. So we hope that with this panel, we can do the research and hold public participation processes such as forums and voter education and all those things so that people do have a voice towards this alternative electoral framework that we would like to develop. So a tangible document that we'd like to develop as civil society organizations that we can really get behind and advocate for. As we know, the state has also established its own panel and they'll be doing their work. We hope that we can also complement that work. There may be points of convergence and divergence, right? But we do hope that with our commitment to democratic principles, specific democratic principles, as these organizations that are part of this panel have committed to particular democratic principles that we would want to hold dear when we are advising on electoral framework. My apologies.
Don't worry, it
Hope,
happens to me all the time.
yeah. So we hope that we do when we would want to advise on an electoral reform that really speaks to particular democratic principles like an increase in accountability and increase in transparency and really push for that moving forward. And we hope that we can leave something tangible so that those who are able to take on the baton at the end of this process in March 2025 are also able to advocate for something that civil society has developed with the voices of the people and a people-led process.
Okay, my final 2, 3 questions would be this would talk to local elections as well. Would I be correct in thinking that? Local and national elections. And how is all of this very important information going to be disseminated to the man in the street so that he understands what are his rights and how he can be active in calling out people who don't deliver, who've made false promises, who then pre the elections, like Action SA said, they'd never go into bed with the ANC. And lo and behold, look what's happened. They've joined the GNU. So, how do you disseminate this information and how does it give me the power to call them out and to be accountable?
So for us, this critical analysis of various electoral systems and looking at our context, the past 3 decades, and looking forward, we would want to have an electoral system really that commits to the democratic principles that we are looking at our context, but also looking at all 3 levels, right? National, provincial, and government. We hope that it will be so. We would want to really come up with a document that is digestible, that an everyday person can read and understand. Part of the mandate for us is really having those public forums and workshops where we would really be introducing the electoral system and keeping the electoral reform in the public's imagination, right? In a way that is understandable so that people do know what impacts the electoral system has on their vote, whether their vote counts or not with the current electoral system, and what they can do with it moving forward once we start advocating for a particular electoral system, and how they can also participate in these processes. So that would be form part of this process for us.
How far down the line have you gone, and how soon can we expect to see some sort of communication begin to getting our heads around it, understand what are our rights, where we stand regarding this new electoral system. And obviously, if we understand it and we put it into action, it gives us a lot of power, does it not? And I'm wondering if the politicians would want that to happen.
So certainly part of this process for us is the intention to provide everyday citizens with information that allows them to fully exercise their political rights. And this is part of it, disseminating this information in a way that is understandable. So on Friday, we launched the panel, introduced the panel to the public. We are starting right now with the timelines in terms of when we start with the data collection as well as the public participation processes. So in the next month, we'll definitely be doing the background and desktop research, but also submitting the submission for the public call that was put out by the states panel, the closing date of which is the 30th of September. So hopefully by November this year, we would have done or started with our public participation process and really start disseminating information so that people understand, so that when they do contribute even towards this framework that we'd like to build, they are really coming from a point of understanding and being able to fully exercise that political right.
Okay, my final question. We are running out of time here. I spoke about dissemination, but how is this information going to get to the parties concerned, to the ordinary man in the street? Will it be via their ward councillors, or will it be some sort of public communication that will go out far and wide?
Yes, so we've gotten quite a few offers in terms of community radio stations being able to use them as a way to reach the masses. Would also I think we would want to do a survey. I think also putting into place the workshops that we want to do, the forums that we want to do in various communities. Obviously, with limited resources as small NGOs, we would want to reach a wide variety of people. I think that's why even the panel composition as it is really helps us maximize the resources that we do have. We've got Abahlali baseMjondolo with 150,000 membership nationwide, right? We've got Zabalaza Pathways Institute representative who's representing the rural areas in the Eastern Cape and such. So we do hope, and we've got Equal Education who will also be representing over 7,000 youth nationwide. So we do hope that it will get out there.
Absolutely. And keep us in the loop as well. We too, by way of Salam Media, we are all about humanitarian journalism. We will play our part too. So keep us in the loop, and we will do our bit by communicating and disseminating as widely as we can by way of interviews and whatever else. Whatever ways of communication we can utilize to get this very important information out. So thank you indeed, Boikanyo Moloto, talking to us about this very, very important matter. And that, of course, is the new electoral system. And you guys are very hard at work trying to get your deadlines met. And of course, it's all about developing an alternative electoral system in the best interest of South African citizens and the country at large. Thank you for being with us. God bless and go well.
Thank you so much for having me, Julie. Thank you to the audience.
Okay, it's time for me to wrap up. 10:20 a.m. Thank you indeed for the production team. I will be back with you on Monday morning at the same time. Take care, take care on the roads, and don't forget that great public program tomorrow night, 21st of August, from 6:30 p.m. at the Lakewood Conference Center, number 2 Vinton Road in Omondi. That's where Yumna Al Said, Al Jazeera journalist, our guest here at Salam Media, will be talking about Gaza in Focus, and Dr. Naledi Pandor, former DIRCO minister, will be in attendance as well. Look forward to seeing you then. As always, Assalamu alaikum and Khuda Hafiz from me, Julie Ali.